The note was written in crayon, the letters shaky and uneven, taped to the nurse's station desk where Amara Johnson couldn't miss it. Please visit Daddy. He is feeling lonely. Room 304. From Minji, Haiwan, and Tai Yang. Amara stared at the piece of construction paper, decorated with crooked Christmas trees and stars. Her heart squeezed. It was Christmas Eve, nearly midnight, and she was working the graveyard shift at Chicago Memorial Hospital. Most of the halls were quiet, patients sleeping, families gone home. But 3 children somewhere in this city were worried enough about their father to sneak a note to his nurse. She glanced down the hallway toward room 304. The patient there had been admitted 2 days ago with injuries from a car accident, though the 2 men in expensive suits standing guard outside his door suggested something far more complicated. She'd been warned by the charge nurse to keep interactions professional and brief, but this note, those children. Amara folded the paper carefully and slipped it into her scrub's pocket. Sometimes being a good nurse meant more than just administering medication and checking vitals. Sometimes it meant recognizing when someone, patient or family, needed something medicine couldn't provide. She grabbed her stethoscope and headed toward room 304, unaware she was about to step into a world far more dangerous than she could imagine. The men outside room 304 straightened when Amara approached. They were younger than she'd initially thought, mid-20s perhaps, with sharp eyes that tracked her every movement. Both wore dark suits despite the late hour, and neither smiled. "I need to check on my patient," Amara said, keeping her voice steady and professional. The taller one, Korean like most of the visitors she'd seen coming and going, studied her for a long moment before stepping aside. 5 minutes. "I'll take as long as my patient needs," Amara replied, meeting his gaze directly. She'd worked in this hospital for 6 years, dealt with gang members, drug dealers, and every flavor of dangerous that Chicago had to offer. She wasn't about to be intimidated in her own hospital. Something flickered in the guard's expression. Respect, maybe, before he nodded curtly and opened the door. The room was dimly lit, only the soft glow from the monitor illuminating the space. The man in the bed wasn't asleep. He sat propped against pillows, his left arm in a sling, bandages visible beneath the hospital gown. Even injured, even in a hospital bed, he radiated a kind of controlled power that made the air feel heavy. Jae-sung Park. She'd read his chart. 35 years old. Businessman. Right. "Mr. Park," Amara said softly, approaching the bed. "I'm Amara, your night nurse. I wanted to check your vitals and see how you're managing with pain." He turned his head toward her, and she got her first clear look at his face. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, eyes so dark they appeared black in the low light. His hair was disheveled, unusual, she sensed, for a man who clearly valued control. A bandage covered part of his forehead, and bruising shadowed his left eye. But what caught her attention was the tattoo visible above the collar of his hospital gown, intricate black lines that disappeared beneath the fabric. She'd caught glimpses of it when changing his bandages earlier in her shift. 3 cherry blossoms intertwined with Korean characters, beautiful and meaningful. "I'm fine," he said, his voice deeper than she expected, touched with the barest hint of an accent. "You don't need to be here. Your children disagree." Amara pulled the note from her pocket and held it up. "Minji, Haiwan, and Taeyang are worried about you." The change in him was immediate, his entire body tensed, his good hand gripping the blanket. Where did you get that?" "They left it at the nurse's station." Amara moved closer, setting the note on his bedside table. "I'm guessing they bribed or sweet-talked someone into bringing them here earlier." Jae-sung closed his eyes, and for the first time since she'd entered, he looked less like a dangerous man and more like an exhausted father. They were supposed to stay home with their grandmother. 6-year-olds don't always follow instructions, especially when they're scared. Amara began taking his blood pressure, her movements efficient but gentle. "How long since you've seen them?" 2 days. His voice was rough. "Since before the accident." Amara didn't comment on the pause, the way the word accident sat heavy and false between them. She noted his blood pressure, slightly elevated, and moved to check his temperature. That's a long time for little ones, especially at Christmas. It's safer this way. Safer for whom? Amara met his eyes as she removed the thermometer. "Mr. Park, I don't know what kind of business you're in, and frankly, it's not my concern. But I do know scared children when I see evidence of them. And I know that whatever danger you think you're protecting them from, the fear of losing their father might be worse." Jae-sung stared at her for a long moment. Most people, especially women, especially civilians, wouldn't speak to him this way. They either feared him or wanted something from him, but this nurse with warm brown skin, natural hair pulled back in a neat bun, and eyes that held both compassion and steel, seemed to see him as simply a patient, simply a father. "What would you suggest?" he asked finally. Amara pulled out her phone. "A video call, just a few minutes. Let them see you're okay, hear your voice. It's Christmas Eve, Mr. Park. Give them that gift, at least." He hesitated, and she could see the war playing out behind his eyes, the desire to see his children versus the need to maintain the walls he'd built around them, around himself. "Please," Amara added quietly. "I can step outside if you need privacy." "No." The word came quickly. "Stay. In case—" He didn't finish, but Amara understood. "In case I don't know what to say, in case I break, in case I need someone to help me be strong for them." She dialed the number he provided, and within seconds, 3 small faces filled the screen, crowding together, eyes wide with hope and fear. "Appa!" they cried in unison, and Amara watched as the dangerous man in the hospital bed transformed into something else entirely, a father who loved his children so much it clearly terrified him. "Appa, are you coming home soon?" Minji's face was closest to the camera, her dark eyes so like her father's, red-rimmed from crying. She wore pink pajamas with reindeer on them, her hair in 2 neat braids. "Soon, Tal," Jae-sung said, his voice gentler than Amara had heard it. "The doctors are taking good care of me." "Nurse Amara is taking care of you?" Haewon pushed his face into view, nearly knocking his sister aside. He had a gap-toothed smile that he wasn't currently using, his expression solemn. "Is she nice? Does she give you medicine that tastes bad?" Despite everything, Amara smiled. "I try to make sure nothing tastes too terrible." 3 pairs of eyes locked onto her, and suddenly she was the focus of their intense scrutiny. She could see Jae-sung in each of them, the same dark eyes, the same serious way of studying the world. But there were differences too, hints of the mother they'd lost in the shape of their smiles, the curve of their cheeks. "You're pretty," Minji announced, "like a princess. Right, Tae-yang?" The third triplet, who'd been quiet until now, nodded shyly. He was smaller than his siblings, Amara noticed, and seemed more reserved. "Do you like Christmas, Miss Amara?" "I do," Amara said, moving closer so she was in frame beside their father. "Though I'm working tonight, so I'm spending it at the hospital." "You're alone?" Haewon's expression turned distressed. "On Christmas? That's sad." "I'm not alone," Amara assured him. "I have lots of patients to take care of, and that makes me happy." "But you don't have family?" Minji pressed. "No kids? No husband?" "Minji," Jae-sung said sharply, but Amara laughed. "It's okay. No, I don't have children or a husband. My family is in Atlanta, but someone has to work on Christmas and I volunteered so nurses with young kids could be home." The 3 children exchanged looks, some silent communication passing between them that only siblings, especially triplets, could understand. "Almayoni says we need to sleep now," Tae-yang said reluctantly, "but we wanted to see you first, Appa. We were worried." "I know, Adul, I'm sorry." Jae-sung's hand tightened on the phone. "But I'm okay. And I'll be home as soon as the doctors say I can leave." "Promise?" All 3 children spoke together. "I promise." They said their goodnights, each child pressing their face close to the camera as if trying to kiss their father through the screen. When the call ended, the room felt suddenly emptier, the silence heavier. Jae-sung set the phone down carefully, his movements controlled, but Amara saw the tremor in his hand. She said nothing, giving him space to compose himself, busying herself with adjusting his IV, even though it didn't need adjusting. "Thank you," he said finally. "For the note. For the call. You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did." Amara met his eyes. "I'm a nurse, Mr. Park. Taking care of people, all aspects of them, not just their physical injuries, that's my job. Most nurses wouldn't have bothered." "Then you've had the wrong nurses." She made a notation on his chart. "Your children are beautiful. How long have you been raising them alone?" The question was bold, probably crossed a professional line, but something about this man and his lonely children on Christmas Eve made her willing to risk it. 2 years. His voice was flat. "Their mother, she died when they were 4. Cancer. It was fast. I'm sorry." Amara's hand moved instinctively to his, a brief touch of comfort before she caught herself and pulled away. That must be incredibly difficult. They barely remember her. Jae-sung stared at where her hand had been. "Sometimes I think that's worse. They're growing up without a mother, and soon they won't even have memories of her." "They have you," Amara said firmly, "and from what I just saw, you're a good father." That matters more than you might think. Jae-sung laughed, but there was no humor in it. A good father wouldn't have ended up in a hospital bed 2 days before Christmas. A good father wouldn't have men with guns standing outside his door. A good father wouldn't be involved in things that might make his children targets. So he wasn't even pretending it was just a car accident. Amara appreciated the honesty, even if it confirmed her suspicions about exactly what kind of business Jae-sung Park conducted. A good father, Amara said slowly, is one who loves his children and tries to do right by them, even when he makes mistakes. And from what I just witnessed, Mr. Park, you clearly love those 3 kids more than anything. Before he could respond, raised voices erupted from the hallway. Amara spun toward the door as it burst open, one of the guards stumbling backward, hand reaching for something under his jacket. "Boss, we have a problem." A man pushed past the guard, and Amara's training kicked in immediately. She positioned herself between the stranger and her patient, one hand reaching for the call button. "Get away from him," the newcomer snarled. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with a scar running down his left cheek, his eyes locked on Jae-sung with pure hatred. "You think hiding in a hospital will save you? You think—" "Amara, move!" Jae-sung's voice was cold, commanding, nothing like the gentle father from moments ago. But Amara had spent 6 years working in one of Chicago's busiest emergency rooms. She'd dealt with violent patients, gang confrontations, and more threats than she could count. She didn't move. "Sir, you need to leave immediately, or I'm calling security," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This is a hospital, and you're disturbing a patient." The man's attention snapped to her, and something ugly twisted his expression. "You his whore? That's why you're protecting him." The insult should have stung, but Amara had heard worse. "I'm his nurse, and you have 5 seconds to leave before I hit this button and have you arrested for threatening a healthcare worker." For a moment, everything hung in balance. The stranger's hand twitched toward his waist. The guards in the hallway tensed. Jae-sung tried to push himself up with his good arm, clearly intending to intervene despite his injuries. But Amara held her ground, thumb hovering over the call button, eyes locked on the intruder with the kind of fearless determination that came from years of refusing to be intimidated by anyone. The stranger took a step back, then another. "This isn't over, Park. You and I both know it." He turned and left, the guards following, and suddenly the room was silent again except for the steady beep of the heart monitor that had definitely increased its pace. Amara's hand was shaking as she lowered it from the call button. The adrenaline that had kept her steady was beginning to fade, replaced by the delayed realization of how dangerous that situation had been. "You shouldn't have done that." Jae-sung's voice was tight. "He could have hurt you, he could have, but he didn't." Amara turned to face him and was surprised to find something like fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for her. "And I wasn't about to let anyone threaten a patient in my care. You don't understand what you just—" "I understand enough." Amara checked his monitors, noting his elevated heart rate and blood pressure. "I understand that you're involved in something dangerous. I understand that man wants to hurt you. And I understand that despite all of that, you're still just a patient who needs care, and a father who loves his children." She met his eyes, saw the war playing out there again, the desire to push her away versus the clear respect he was developing for this stubborn nurse who refused to be intimidated. "You should request a different nurse for tomorrow night," Jae-sung said finally. "It's not safe for you to be around me." Amara smiled, small and genuine. "Mr. Park, I'm from the south side of Chicago. I stopped worrying about safe a long time ago. Now, let me give you something to help you sleep." Doctor's orders. As she administered the medication, she tried to ignore the way his eyes followed her movements, intense and unreadable. Tried to ignore the strange pull she felt toward this dangerous man, with his 3 lonely children, and his visible struggle between the life he led and the father he wanted to be. She was just doing her job, Amara told herself, just being a good nurse. But as she left the room and felt his gaze on her back, she suspected they both knew it was already more complicated than that. Amara was back the next night, despite the logical part of her brain screaming that she should have taken Jae-sung's advice and requested reassignment. It was Christmas Day now, and the hospital was quieter than usual, skeleton staff managing the patients who couldn't go home for the holidays. She'd spent her break researching Jae-sung Park. What she'd found had confirmed her suspicions and added layers of complexity she hadn't expected. He wasn't just involved with the Korean Mafia, he ran it. The Park family had controlled a significant portion of Chicago's Korean organized crime for 2 generations. Everything from high-end gambling operations to more legitimate business ventures that probably weren't as legitimate as they appeared. But what struck her most was a newspaper article from 2 years ago, a small piece in the obituaries section. Song Min Seo, beloved wife and mother, taken too soon by cancer at 32, survived by her husband and their triplets. The photo showed a beautiful woman with a gentle smile, holding 3 4-year-old children. Standing beside her was Jae-sung, younger then, his arm around his wife, his expression softer than anything Amara had seen on his face. He'd been a husband who loved his wife, and now he was a widower trying to raise 3 children alone while running a criminal empire. The contradiction of it, the humanity within the danger, fascinated her in ways she knew it shouldn't. "You came back," Jae-sung said when she entered his room for her rounds. He was sitting up, looking stronger than the previous night, though still confined by his injuries. The bruising on his face had darkened to deep purple and black. "I work here," Amara replied, keeping her tone professional as she washed her hands. "And you're still my patient. How's your pain level tonight?" "Manageable." He watched her approach. "Did you have a good Christmas?" "Quiet. Ate terrible cafeteria food and watched patients sleep." "You?" "The kids video called twice. Halmione, their grandmother, brought them to Christmas service at the Korean church. They sang carols for me." Something soft entered his expression. "Badly. Very badly." Amara laughed. 6-year-olds aren't known for their musical talent." "No, but they're enthusiastic." He paused. "They asked about you. Wanted to know if you were working again tonight. If you'd had a good Christmas, if you were still alone." "They're sweet kids. They're relentless kids," Jae-sung corrected, but there was affection in his voice. "Once they decide they like someone, they don't let go easily. I should warn you. They've apparently decided you're important." "Important how?" He looked uncomfortable, a hint of color touching his cheeks despite his obvious efforts to maintain composure. "Minji informed me that you would make a good mother because you have a kind smile and magic hands that make people feel better. Hae-won said you're pretty and brave, which are the 2 most important qualities apparently. And Tae-yang." He trailed off. "What did Tae-yang say?" "He said you made me smile, and I haven't smiled in a long time." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Amara busied herself checking his bandages, trying to ignore the way her heart had skipped at that confession. "Mr. Park, Jae-sung, please." He caught her hand gently with his good one as she adjusted his IV. "You've stood between me and danger, tolerated my children's interrogation, and worked on Christmas to make sure I had someone checking on me. I think we're past formalities." His hand was warm, calloused in ways that suggested he did more than sign papers and give orders. Amara knew she should pull away, maintain professional distance, but something kept her still. "Jae-sung," she said softly, "your children sound wonderful. And yes, I smiled yesterday, but that's just, I smile at all my patients. It's part of being a nurse. Do you stand in front of guns for all your patients too?" "That man yesterday didn't have a gun." "Yes, he did." "You were just too busy being fearless to notice." Jae-sung's thumb brushed across her knuckles, the touch sending electricity up her arm. "You could have been hurt. You could have been killed. And you did it anyway. Because it was the right thing to do." "The right thing," he repeated, something bitter in his voice. "I've spent so many years doing the wrong things, justified them in so many ways, that I'd almost forgotten there are still people in the world who simply do what's right, without calculation or agenda." Amara gently extracted her hand, needing the distance to think clearly. "Everyone has an agenda, Jae-sung. Mine is keeping my patients healthy and safe. That's all this is." But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't entirely true. She'd checked on him 3 times already tonight, more than necessary. She'd brought him decent coffee from the shop across the street, knowing the hospital version was terrible. She'd even printed out photos from the triplets' video call when she noticed he kept re-watching the saved recording. This wasn't just a nurse caring for a patient. This was something more, something that terrified and intrigued her in equal measure. "When are they releasing you?" Amara asked, changing the subject as she made notes on his chart. "Tomorrow, if there are no complications." He paused. "I've arranged for private care at home. The hospital administrator was very accommodating once my lawyer explained the situation." Of course he was. Amara couldn't quite keep the disapproval from her voice. Money and power could buy anything, apparently, including early discharge against medical advice. "You disapprove. I think you should stay another 3 days minimum. Your injuries are serious, and if that wound reopens..." Then I'll have a doctor at my house who can handle it. Jae-sung's voice was firm. I've been away from my children long enough. They need me home. It's Christmas and I've already missed too much. Amara couldn't argue with that logic, even if the medical side of her brain rebelled against it. Fine, but you follow all discharge instructions. Rest, limited movement, no stress. No stress, Jae-sung repeated, his lips curving into something that wasn't quite a smile. I run a criminal organization, Amara. Stress is my job description. Then delegate, she shot back. Or are you going to tell me there's no one competent enough to handle things while you recover? There are people who can handle the business, but being a father, that I can't delegate. The simple honesty of it, the clear priority he placed on his children over everything else, did something to Amara's heart. This was a man who could order violence, who lived in a world of danger and moral ambiguity, but who loved his kids with a fierce devotion that transcended everything else. They're lucky to have you, Amara said quietly. No. Jae-sung's eyes locked onto hers, intense and unwavering. I'm lucky to have them. They're the only good thing I've ever created, the only pure thing in my life. Everything I do, every choice I make, it's for them, to protect them, to give them a life better than the one I had. Even the illegal choices? She shouldn't have asked. It was too direct, too confrontational. But Amara had never been good at holding back when something important was at stake. Jae-sung didn't look away, especially those. The world I grew up in doesn't reward going straight, Amara. My father built this empire from nothing, came to this country with nothing, and created opportunities where none existed. Was it legal? No. Was it necessary? Absolutely. And now I maintain what he built, so my children have security, options, futures that don't involve struggling the way my parents did. There are other ways, are there? He leaned forward slightly, intensity radiating from him despite his injuries. Tell me, how many black women do you think would be accepted as nurses at top hospitals 50 years ago? How many Korean immigrants could open legitimate businesses without facing discrimination, violence, impossible barriers? The system isn't designed for people who look like you or me to succeed, Amara, so we find other paths. That doesn't make it right. No, he agreed, but it makes it understandable, and sometimes that has to be enough. Before Amara could respond, her pager went off. Code Blue, room 217. She glanced at it, professional instinct overriding everything else. I have to go, she said, already moving toward the door. Amara, Jae-sung's voice stopped her. Be careful. That man yesterday, he's not the only one who knows I'm here. There may be others who come looking. The guards outside your door can't be everywhere. Please, just be aware, for me. The concern in his voice, the clear worry for her safety despite everything else happening in his dangerous world, made Amara pause. She looked back at him, this complicated man, who defied every simple categorization, and nodded. I will. And you rest. Doctor's orders. As she rushed out to attend to the Code Blue, Amara tried to ignore the warmth spreading through her chest, the way her mind kept circling back to dark eyes and gentle voices, and 3 children who wanted their father home for Christmas. She was in dangerous territory, and it had nothing to do with organized crime and everything to do with the way Jae-sung Park was beginning to make her feel things she'd sworn off years ago. Things like connection, like possibility, like hope for something more than lonely Christmas shifts and empty apartments. The Code Blue took 40 minutes to resolve, an elderly patient whose heart had given out, but who they'd managed to revive. By the time Amara returned to the nurse's station, exhausted and emotionally drained, she found another note waiting for her. This one was on expensive stationery, written in elegant handwriting that was clearly not from a 6-year-old. Please come home with Appa tomorrow. We want you here for Christmas. We have presents and cookies, and Halmione says you can stay in the guest room, and you don't have to be alone anymore. Please say yes. Love, Minji, Haiwon, and Tai Yang, and Appa, even though he didn't write this, but we know he wants you to come too. Amara's hand trembled as she read it. This was crossing every professional line, accepting an invitation to a patient's home, getting involved with his family. With him. But those children were so lonely. And if she was being honest with herself, so was she. She folded the note carefully and slipped it into her pocket, next to the first one. She'd have to decide before tomorrow. She'd have to figure out if she was brave enough to step fully into this dangerous, complicated situation, or if the smart thing was to walk away now, before her heart got any more involved than it already was. Amara stood outside the wrought-iron gates of the Park estate, second-guessing every decision, that had led her to this moment. The house beyond, mansion, really, was a sprawling modern structure of glass and stone, nestled in the exclusive North Shore suburbs where homes started at several million and went up from there. Security cameras tracked her movement. The guards at the gatehouse had checked her ID 3 times. She should leave. This was insane. She was a nurse from the South Side who'd grown up in a modest Atlanta neighborhood, and she was about to walk into the home of a Korean Mafia boss because 3 6-year-olds had asked her to spend Christmas with them. But then the gate swung open, and a woman emerged from the house. She was elderly, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, wearing traditional Korean hanbok in deep burgundy. She moved with quiet grace, her expression warm but assessing as she approached. "You must be Amara," she said, her English accented but clear. "I am Park Soon-ja, Ye-sung's mother. The children have been watching for you since dawn." "Mrs. Park, I'm not sure I should—" "Call me Halmione. Everyone does." The older woman's eyes crinkled with a smile. "And you should absolutely stay. My son has been unbearable since returning home yesterday, worried you would decline the invitation. The children have been worse. Please come inside before they wear holes in the carpet from pacing." Amara found herself being gently but firmly guided through the gates, up a stone pathway lined with dormant gardens that probably bloomed spectacularly in spring. The front door opened before they reached it, and 3 small bodies came tumbling out. "Miss Amara!" Minji reached her first, grabbing her hand with both of hers. "How you came? We made cookies and Halmione helped us wrap your present, and Appa said you might not come, but I knew you would because you're nice and—" "Breathe, Tal," Soon-ja said gently, but she was smiling. Haiwon attached himself to Amara's other hand, beaming up at her with that gap-toothed grin. "Do you like kimchi? Halmione made traditional Christmas food, but also Korean food, because Appa says Americans don't always like our food, but I think you will because you're not scared of anything." Tae-yang hung back slightly, shy but clearly excited, clutching a poorly wrapped package to his chest. "I picked your present," he said softly. "Minji and Haewon helped wrap it, but I picked it." Amara's throat tightened. These children, these sweet, earnest children who'd had so much loss in their young lives, had welcomed her with such open hearts. How could she possibly regret coming? "I love kimchi," she said, squeezing both hands that held hers. "And I'm excited to see what you picked for me, Tae-yang, though you didn't have to get me anything." "Appa said you have to have presents on Christmas," Minji said firmly. "It's a rule." "Your father's right." Amara let herself be pulled inside, into a foyer that was all marble and modern art, somehow both luxurious and surprisingly warm. Family photos lined one wall, candid shots of the triplets at various ages, formal portraits, and there in the center, a wedding photo of Jae-sung and the beautiful woman from the obituary, both smiling at each other like nothing else in the world existed. "That's our Yoma," Tae-yang said, noticing where Amara's attention had gone. "She's in heaven now, but Appa says she watches over us." "I'm sure she does," Amara said softly, "and I bet she's very proud of all 3 of you." "She'd like you," Minji announced with 6-year-old certainty, "because you're kind and you help people and you have a pretty smile." "Minji, what have I said about overwhelming our guests?" Jae-sung's voice came from the top of the stairs, and Amara looked up to find him descending carefully, one hand on the railing. He'd changed from the hospital gown into dark slacks and a white button-down shirt with, her breath caught, 4 buttons undone, revealing the full extent of his tattoo. 3 cherry blossoms, each one intricately detailed, intertwined with Korean characters she couldn't read. The design wrapped around his throat and disappeared beneath the collar, beautiful and dangerous, and completely mesmerizing. "Appa!" all 3 children chorused, and Amara forced herself to look away from his neck, his chest, the way the shirt fit his frame despite the bandages she knew were underneath. "So you came," Jae-sung said, his eyes meeting Amara's as he reached the bottom of the stairs. "I wasn't sure you would." "Your children were very persuasive," Amara replied, trying to sound casual, even though her heart was racing. "And I figured someone should make sure you're actually resting instead of working." "I'm resting." But the slight wince as he moved suggested otherwise. "Appa tried to go to his office this morning," Haewon tattled immediately. Halmione yelled at him in Korean. "I did not yell," Soon-ja said serenely. "I simply reminded him firmly of his priorities." "You yelled," Minji confirmed. "It was kind of scary." Jae-sung looked chagrined, and Amara found herself fighting a smile. "Sounds like you need more than just me checking on you. You need someone who speaks Korean and isn't afraid to raise their voice." "What I need," Jae-sung said, his eyes never leaving hers, is for everyone to stop conspiring to keep me in bed like an invalid. You were stabbed, Amara reminded him, twice and had internal bleeding. Being treated like an invalid is appropriate. See? Minji looked triumphantly at her father. Miss Amara agrees with us. The afternoon that followed was surreal in the best way. They ate a strange but delicious combination of traditional Korean dishes and American Christmas food. The children showed Amara every corner of the enormous house, from the playroom that looked like a toy store had exploded inside it, to the library that held more books than Amara had seen outside of actual libraries. She watched Jae-sung with his kids, saw the way he transformed around them, patient when Haewon spilled juice on his shirt, gentle when Tae-yang grew overwhelmed by the excitement, proud when Minji demonstrated the new piano piece she'd learned. This was a different man from the cold figure in the hospital bed, or even the intense person she'd argued with about right and wrong. This was just a father, doing his best. You're good with them, Sunja said quietly, finding Amara alone in the kitchen while helping clean up from dinner. The children, they've been struggling since their mother passed. Jae-sung tries, and he loves them desperately, but he's one person, and the life he leads. She trailed off, then looked directly at Amara. You know what my son is. It wasn't a question. I do. And yet you came anyway. I came for the children, Amara said. They shouldn't be alone on Christmas. None of us should. You came for the children, Sunja repeated, a knowing look in her eyes. Tell yourself that if it helps, but I've seen the way my son looks at you, and the way you look at him, when you think no one's watching. This isn't just about the children, Amara, and I think you know that. Before Amara could respond, shouts erupted from the living room. She rushed in to find Jae-sung on his feet, his face pale, one hand pressed to his side, where blood was beginning to seep through his white shirt. I'm fine, he was saying, even as he swayed slightly. I just moved wrong. You tore your stitches, Amara said, professional mode kicking in immediately. Kids, go with Halmione, please, right now. The children scattered, shepherded by Sunja, who threw Amara a look of approval before disappearing. Amara guided Jae-sung to the couch, carefully lifting his shirt to examine the damage. I told you to rest, she said, her hands steady, even though her heart was pounding. The wound had partially reopened, blood welling steadily from the surgical site. I was resting. Then Haewon wanted me to see his Lego creation, and I bent down. And now you're bleeding. Amara pressed a clean cloth against the wound, applying pressure. You have a medical kit here. Upstairs bathroom. But Amara, I can call my doctor. I'm here now. Tell me you have proper supplies and I can restitch this. He directed her to a bathroom that was better stocked than some emergency rooms she'd worked in. Clearly this wasn't the first time medical intervention had been needed at the park house. The thought should have disturbed her more than it did. Working by the bright bathroom lights, Amara cleaned and restitched the wound with practiced efficiency. Jae-sung sat still, watching her face rather than what her hands were doing, his jaw tight against what had to be considerable pain. You refused pain medication, Amara said, not looking up from her work. I need to stay alert. The children are fine. They're with your mother, probably eating cookies and being reassured that you're okay. She tied off the last stitch, covered the wound with fresh bandages. But you won't be okay if you keep pushing yourself like this. I can't afford to be weak. Resting isn't weakness. Amara finally looked up, found him watching her with an intensity that made breathing difficult. It's survival, and your children need you alive more than they need you invincible. Amara. His good hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with the violent world he inhabited. Why are you really here? She should move away, should maintain distance, should remember all the reasons why getting involved with a patient, with a criminal, with a man whose life was built on danger, was a terrible idea. Instead, she found herself leaning into his touch, her hand covering his. I don't know, she admitted. I should have said no. I should have stayed away. But those kids and you and I couldn't. I'm not a good man, Jae-sung said softly. I've done things that would horrify you. I've made choices that can't be undone. Getting close to me, it puts you at risk. You saw that man at the hospital. He's not the only enemy I have. I know. Amara's other hand rested over his heart, feeling it beat steady and strong beneath her palm. I know all of that, and I'm still here. Why? Because those children wrote me a note in crayon. Because you love them so much it breaks and remakes you at the same time. Because when you look at me, I feel seen in a way I haven't in years. She took a shaky breath. And because maybe I'm tired of always being careful, always being smart, always being alone. Jae-sung's thumb traced her jawline, his eyes searching hers. I can't promise safety. I can't promise normal. Everything about my life is complicated and dangerous and morally grey. I'm not asking for promises, Amara whispered. I'm just asking, let me see where this goes. Let me be here, for you and for those kids. Let me... He kissed her, gentle. Despite the fire, she could feel him holding back, mindful of his injuries and the chaos of emotions swirling between them. It was a kiss that tasted like possibility and danger, like Christmas miracles and terrible decisions, like everything Amara had been running from and toward simultaneously. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Jae-sung rested his forehead against hers. Please visit Daddy. He is feeling lonely, he murmured. That's what Tae-yang told them to write. He said I looked lonely in that hospital bed, and he thought maybe you were lonely too, and that maybe we could be lonely together, and then neither of us would be lonely anymore. Amara laughed, the sound slightly wet with unshed tears. That's very wise for a 6-year-old. They're too smart for their own good. Takes after their mother. He pulled back slightly, studied her face. Stay. Not just for today. Stay, Amara. Help me figure out how to be a better father. Help me keep those kids safe and happy. Help me remember that there's more to life than the darkness I usually inhabit. That's a lot of responsibility for one nurse. You're not just any nurse. You're the woman who stood between me and danger, without hesitation. Who sees the man I am and the man I'm trying to be and doesn't run from either. Who my children adore and who my mother already treats like family. I barely know you, Amara protested weakly. Then get to know me. Move into the guest room. Spend time with us. See if this thing between us is real or just Christmas magic and gratitude. His hand tightened on hers. I'm not asking forever. I'm asking for a chance. It was insane. It violated every professional boundary. Her nursing license could be at risk. Her safety definitely was. But looking into his eyes, feeling the warmth of his hand in hers, thinking about 3 sweet children who wanted their father to be less lonely. 1 month, Amara heard herself saying. I'll stay 1 month, trial basis. I keep my apartment, my job, my life outside this. But I'll be here in the evenings, weekends. I'll help with the kids, make sure you actually recover. And we see if this is real. Jae-sung smiled, genuine and warm and transformative. 1 month, I can work with that. From downstairs came the sounds of children calling, eager to open presents, to include Miss Amara in their Christmas traditions. Soonja's voice joined them, amused and indulgent. Amara stood, offered Jae-sung her hand to help him up carefully. Come on, you have children waiting, and apparently I have presents to open. Thank you, Jae-sung said, his voice thick with emotion. For giving us this chance, for seeing us, for being brave enough to try. Don't thank me yet, Amara replied, but she was smiling. We haven't survived a month together. You might drive me crazy. Don't, he said, following her toward the door. We might discover we're exactly what each other needs. As they descended the stairs together to where 3 excited children and 1 knowing grandmother waited, Amara thought about the note that started everything. Please visit Daddy, he is feeling lonely. She'd come to visit. She'd brought Christmas spirit to a man who desperately needed light in his darkness. And in return, she'd found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. A family who needed her as much as she needed them. It wasn't safe. It wasn't smart. But maybe, just maybe, it was exactly right. 3 weeks into her 1-month trial, Amara had settled into a routine at the park house that felt both surreal and completely natural. She'd finish her hospital shift, sleep a few hours at her apartment, then drive to the North Shore suburbs to spend evenings with the triplets, while Jae-sung conducted whatever business he couldn't avoid. Weekends were family time, trips to museums, movie nights, elaborate meals that Soonja insisted on teaching Amara to cook. The children had bloomed under the attention. Minji was bolder, her natural leadership shining through as she organized elaborate games that all 3 participated in. Haewon had stopped having nightmares, according to Soonja, sleeping through the night for the first time in months, and Tae-yang, sweet shy Tae-yang, had started calling her Miss Amara Ioma, a Korean term of endearment that had made her heart clench the first time she'd heard it. But it was the moments with Jae-sung that confused and thrilled her most. Stolen conversations after the children went to bed, his hand finding hers as they watched movies together, the way his eyes followed her around the room as if afraid she might disappear. He was letting her see more of his world. Not the violence, he was careful about that, but the complexity. The legitimate businesses he ran alongside the illegal ones, the community work he funded anonymously, the fine line he walked between darkness and trying to do right by his family. "You're thinking too hard," Jae-sung said now, his voice pulling her from her thoughts. They were in the kitchen, the house quiet around them. The children were asleep upstairs, Soonja had retired to her suite, and it was just the two of them in the soft light of under-cabinet LEDs. "I'm always thinking," Amara replied, sipping the tea he'd made her. "Occupational hazard. What are you thinking about?" He moved closer, leaning against the counter beside her, careful of his still-healing injuries. "How strange this all is. 3 weeks ago, I was spending Christmas alone in a hospital. Now I'm—" She gestured vaguely at the house around them. "Here. Part of your life, part of their lives. Do you regret it?" "No." The answer came without hesitation. "That's what's so strange. I should regret it. This is complicated and dangerous and goes against every logical decision I've ever made, but I don't regret it at all." Jae-sung's hand covered hers on the counter. "The month is almost up. I know. I'm hoping you'll stay." His voice was careful, but she could hear the vulnerability underneath. "Not in the guest room. With me. With us. Really stay." Amara turned to face him, studying the man who'd become so important so quickly. His injuries had healed enough that he moved without pain now, though she still caught him favoring his left side occasionally. The tattoo on his neck had become familiar, something she found herself tracing with her fingers during quiet moments. She knew his tells now, the way his jaw tightened when he was stressed, how his accent became more pronounced when he was tired, the soft way he spoke Korean to his children when they were upset. "I need you to be honest with me," she said, "about what staying would mean, about the danger, about what your life really looks like." Jae-sung was quiet for a long moment, weighing his words. "There are people who want to hurt me, to take what I've built. The man at the hospital, his name is Hwang Tae-min. His family used to control territory that's now mine. He blames me for his father's death, even though his father's own decisions led to his downfall. He won't give up. Are you in immediate danger?" "No more than usual. I have security, loyal people, systems in place." He paused. "But I won't lie to you, Amara, there's always risk. Being associated with me, it puts a target on anyone I care about, including you. The children have been protected since birth. They attend a private school with extensive security. They're never alone. Every person who comes near them has been vetted." His hand tightened on hers. "If you stay, we extend that protection to you. Guards when you need them, secure transportation, everything necessary to keep you safe. I don't want to live in a cage. I know, and I won't ask you to, but I need you to be smart, aware. Let us protect you without fighting it every step." He pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her face. "I'm being selfish asking you to stay. The right thing would be to let you go, keep you out of this world, but I can't. Those kids need you. I need you." "Need," Amara repeated softly. "That's a strong word." "It's the right word." Jae-sung's thumb brushed her cheek. "You've brought light into this house, Amara. You've given my children something I couldn't. A maternal presence, someone who cares for them without agenda or obligation. You've shown me that I can be more than just the head of an organization, that there's room in my life for something soft and good." "I'm not soft." "No," he agreed, smiling slightly. "You're steel wrapped in kindness. You're the woman who stood up to armed men to protect a patient, who calls me out when I'm being stupid, who makes my children laugh and my mother approve." His forehead touched hers. "You're exactly what we need, what I need." Before Amara could respond, her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, saw her supervisor's name and frowned. "I need to take this. It's the hospital." The conversation was brief, but concerning. There'd been an incident. A patient brought in with suspicious injuries asking specifically for Amara by name. The description the intake nurse gave made Amara's blood run cold. "That's Hwang's younger brother," Jae-sung said immediately when she told him, his expression darkening. "It's a trap, you can't go." "I have to. He's asking for me specifically. If I don't show up, it reflects poorly on the hospital. Could cost me my job. Your job isn't worth your life." "We don't know it's a trap for certain," but Amara's voice lacked conviction. "I'm a nurse, Jae-sung. I can't just refuse to see a patient because of who they're related to." "Yes, you can. Especially when that patient is using you to get to me." He was already pulling out his phone, texting rapidly. "If you insist on going, you don't go alone. I'm coming with you, and so are my people. You can't walk into a hospital surrounded by guards. Watch me." They argued for 10 more minutes, but eventually compromised. Amara would go to the hospital, but two of Jae-sung's most trusted security would be there, dressed as civilians, keeping their distance but watching. Jae-sung would stay at the house with the children, but he'd be in constant communication. "Promise me," Jae-sung said as she gathered her things, catching her hand and pulling her back for one more moment. "Promise me you'll be careful, that you'll leave at the first sign of trouble, that you won't try to be a hero." "I promise to be smart," Amara said, stretching up to kiss him briefly, "and I promise I'm coming back. We still have a week left in our month. We have more than a week." He kissed her again, deeper, urgent. "We have a lifetime if you'll stay. Please stay, Amara, don't let fear drive you away." "I'm not afraid," she whispered against his lips. "That's the problem. I should be terrified of all of this, but I'm not. I'm falling, Jae-sung. Falling for you, for those kids, for this strange, complicated life, and I don't know if I'm ready for that." "Then fall," he said simply. "I'll catch you. I promise." The hospital was unusually quiet when Amara arrived an hour later. Her supervisor met her at the entrance, looking concerned. "He's in room 412. Came in complaining of chest pain, but his vitals are stable. Something feels off about this, Amara. Maybe you should—" "I know. I'll be careful." She could feel the security team Jae-sung had sent, even though she couldn't identify which people they were. The knowledge was both comforting and unsettling. This was her life now if she stayed, always aware of potential danger, always watched over, always connected to Jae-sung's dark world. Room 412's door was closed. Amara took a deep breath, settled her professional mask in place, and entered. The man in the bed looked nothing like his brother. Where Hwang Tae-min was rough and scarred, this man was refined, almost delicate, but his eyes held the same cold calculation. "Nurse Johnson," he said, his English perfect. "Thank you for coming. I know it's unusual, requesting a specific nurse. What seems to be the problem, Mr. Hwang? Please call me Seung, and the problem—" He sat up fully, and Amara's instincts screamed. "The problem is that you've inserted yourself into business that doesn't concern you." Amara moved toward the door, but it opened before she reached it. Hwang Tae-min stepped inside, and this time there was definitely a gun visible under his jacket. "Going somewhere?" he asked, his voice mocking. "We're just getting started." But before he could say more, the door burst open again. Not Jae-sung, he'd promised to stay with the children, but 5 men and women in hospital security uniforms, weapons drawn. "Chicago PD undercover detail," the lead officer said, and Amara recognized her. Officer Martinez, who'd been working hospital security for months. "Hands where we can see them. Now." The Hwang brothers were arrested within minutes, both wanted on outstanding warrants that Amara suspected Jae-sung had made sure would be enforced at exactly this moment. As she gave her statement to the police, her phone buzzed with a text from Jae-sung. "I told you I'd protect you, always. Come home, Amara. Come home to us." Home. When had the Park House become home? When had Jae-sung and 3 6-year-olds become her family? But as Amara drove back through the quiet streets, away from danger and toward the lights of the house where people who loved her waited, she realized it didn't matter when it had happened. It only mattered that it was true. She found Jae-sung in the living room, trying to pretend he hadn't been pacing. He crossed to her in 3 strides, pulling her into his arms with a desperation that spoke of every fear he'd been holding while she was gone. "You're okay," he breathed against her hair. "You're okay. I'm okay. Your security team was perfect, and apparently you had undercover police already in place. I've been working with the district attorney for months, building a case against the Hwang family. Tonight just accelerated the timeline." He pulled back enough to see her face. "I'm sorry you were used as bait." "I wasn't bait, I was protected." Amara's hands framed his face. "You kept your promise. You kept me safe without caging me, without taking away my choices." "Amara, I'll stay." The words came easily. Felt right. Not just for the rest of the month, really stay. Move in, be part of this family, figure out how to balance my nursing career with your world. "I'll stay," Jae-sung. His kiss was answer enough, but when they broke apart, he said the words anyway. "I love you. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you. From that first moment you stood between me and danger, fearless and stubborn and absolutely perfect." "I love you too," Amara whispered. "You and those 3 troublemakers upstairs. This whole complicated, beautiful mess." "Miss Amara," Minji's voice came from the stairs, followed by the thunder of 3 6-year-olds who should absolutely have been asleep. "Are you back? Did you fight bad guys? Are you staying forever now? Can we call you Ioma instead of Miss Amara Ioma?" Jae-sung groaned, but Amara laughed, opening her arms as all 3 children barreled into her. I'm staying, and you can call me whatever feels right. Ioma, Taeyang said firmly, snuggling against her side. You're our Ioma now. Then I'm your Ioma now, Amara agreed, feeling her heart expand to hold all of this, the danger and the love, the complications and the certainty, the man watching her with devotion in his eyes, and the children who'd brought them together with a simple crayon note. Soonja appeared in the doorway, took in the scene and smiled. Welcome home, daughter, she said in Korean, and Jae-sung translated softly. Welcome home, he echoed. Thank you for bringing Christmas spirit to our lives, for making us whole again. Amara looked around at the family that had claimed her as their own, at the home that had opened its doors, at the future that was complicated and dangerous and absolutely right. Thank you for being lonely enough to need me, she replied, for writing that note, for giving me a reason to stop being alone. 3 children, 1 man, and an entire future stretched out before them. It wouldn't be easy. There would be dangers and challenges and moments when the 2 worlds she belonged to would clash. But standing there surrounded by love, Amara knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best Christmas miracles were the ones you never saw coming. The ones that started with a plea written in crayon and ended with a family made whole. And sometimes, being brave enough to visit someone who was lonely meant discovering you'd been lonely too, and finding exactly where you belonged. 6 months later, the Park House had transformed in subtle but meaningful ways. Amara's medical textbooks shared shelf space with Minji's princess stories. The kitchen held both kimchi in traditional earthenware and the ingredients for Amara's grandmother's peach cobbler. Photos had been added to the family wall, Amara with the triplets at the zoo, Jae-sung and Amara at a charity gala, all of them together at Minji's piano recital. Amara had reduced her hospital hours, taking a position at a private clinic. Jae-sung's legitimate business interests had funded a facility that served the Korean immigrant community with free and reduced-cost healthcare. She still nursed, still helped people, but now she also came home to family dinners and bedtime stories and a man who looked at her like she'd hung the moon. The danger hadn't disappeared entirely. There would always be rivals, always be threats inherent in Jae-sung's world. But he was working with federal prosecutors now, slowly transitioning the organization toward legitimate enterprises, using his influence for good, even as he maintained the power that kept his family safe. Ioma, watch this, Haewon called from the pool, executing a cannonball that soaked Minji, who shrieked indignantly. Very impressive, Amara called back, laughing as Taeyang attempted his own jump, more careful but equally enthusiastic. Jae-sung's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Happy, he murmured. Terrifyingly happy, Amara admitted. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing's going wrong. We're just living, being a family. He turned her in his arms, the setting sun painting everything golden. Marry me. Amara's breath caught. What? Marry me, Jae-sung repeated, pulling a ring box from his pocket, because of course he'd been planning this, probably for weeks. Make it official. Let me spend the rest of my life showing you that taking a chance on us was the best decision you ever made. The ring was perfect. A simple band with 3 small diamonds, representing the 3 children who'd brought them together. Amara's eyes filled with tears as he slipped it on her finger. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. 3 children cheered from the pool, and Amara realized they'd known, had probably helped plan this. Soonja appeared with champagne, smiling that knowing smile. As Jae-sung kissed her, surrounded by the family they'd built from loneliness and Christmas miracles and 1 crayon note, Amara thought about that night in the hospital, about 3 children who'd been brave enough to ask a stranger to visit their lonely father, about a man who'd learned to love again despite his fears, and about a nurse who'd brought Christmas spirit to a Korean Mafia boss and found her home in the process. Please visit Daddy, he is feeling lonely. She'd visited, and in doing so she'd discovered that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is simply showing up, being present, bringing light to darkness. And sometimes, when you do that, you discover that you were the one who needed saving all along. The end.